Biggest stars sits down for what should be a routine interview only to find himself defending his entire career against accusations that threatened to tear down everything he's built. Kevin Hart walked onto the brightly lit set of the Jenna and Friends show expecting nothing more than a casual promotional chat, something he could do half asleep if he had to. The audience erupted with applause. The cameras glided across the studio, and Jenna Martinez welcomed him with the warm, practiced smile of a host who knew exactly how to charm millions. Everything about the setup screamed routine, but there are days in Hollywood when routine turns into revelation, and Kevin was about to step right into one. From the moment Kevin sat down, he carried himself with the signature confidence that had made him a global star. He cracked jokes, teased the audience, and eased into the chair like he'd been born on a talk show set. The crowd loved it. Jenna played along, throwing light-hearted questions his way, keeping things breezy and upbeat, exactly what viewers expected. But underneath the surface of Jenna's smile was something sharper, something calculated. She had done her homework for weeks, compiling notes, digging through interviews, and speaking to people from Kevin's past. Today's conversation wasn't about Kevin's new comedy special. It wasn't about his creative process. It wasn't even about his family, though the promo had promised an intimate deep dive. No, this interview was something else entirely. The shift happened the moment Kevin used the word honesty to describe his new special. Jenna repeated the word slowly, turning it over like a blade she was about to plunge. The warmth drained slightly from her tone, replaced by a curious, subtle tension. Kevin didn't notice at first. He was still performing, still smiling, still engaging the audience with the polished charm he'd mastered over decades on stage. Then Jenna asked a question that wasn't on any cue card, a question that didn't belong in a promotional interview at all. She asked about competition in the comedy world, about whispers from other comedians, about accusations, real or perceived, that Kevin had used his influence to keep certain people from rising alongside him. The studio fell silent. Kevin straightened in his chair, the first crack of uncertainty flashing in his eyes. "I'm not sure I follow," he said carefully. But Jenna wasn't backing away. She was just getting started. The moment Jenna mentioned Marcus Williams, Kevin's expression changed. Not dramatically, just a subtle tightening of the jaw, a flicker of surprise. The kind of shift only visible to those paying close attention. But the cameras caught it. The audience sensed it. Everyone felt the temperature in the room drop a few degrees. Jenna leaned forward slightly, maintaining her calm demeanor. She spoke as though she was merely asking a casual question, but the phrasing was deliberate, pointed. She reminded Kevin of his early days in Philadelphia, of the small clubs where he and Marcus once shared tiny stages, long nights, and the hunger to make it big. But then she introduced a claim, one Kevin hadn't expected to hear today, that Marcus believed Kevin had used his rising influence to keep him from landing auditions once Hollywood started calling. Kevin tried to respond with professionalism. "That's not how the industry works," he explained, keeping his voice steady. But Jenna pushed again. She didn't accuse, she questioned. She quoted. She referenced people who supposedly felt the same way. She built a pattern, piece by piece, name by name, claim by claim. Each question cut a little deeper, and then she reached for a folder. The audience leaned forward. Kevin's eyes locked on the papers in Jenna's hands, and his posture stiffened instantly. She claimed they were emails, internal communications from Kevin's own team. Whether real or not, the mere suggestion of such documents being held up on national television sent a ripple of shock through the studio. Jenna read a short excerpt. Nothing long, nothing overly detailed, just enough to imply that Kevin had privately discouraged another comedians. Shot at a major platform. The air grew thick. The audience stopped breathing. Kevin's face shifted from controlled to rattled. "This is out of context," he insisted, standing halfway out of his chair before sitting again. But Jenna didn't retreat. She pressed again. Calm, collected, almost surgical. Kevin finally snapped. He stood up abruptly, his microphone cord pulling tight as he took a step back. "This is a setup," he said, voice rising. "You brought me here to ambush me." Jenna didn't flinch. The cameras kept rolling. The audience sat frozen. And the interview that was supposed to be routine had officially crossed the point of no return. Kevin paced the small space between his chair and the edge of the stage, his breathing heavy but controlled. He was no stranger to confrontation, but this felt different. This wasn't a scandal he expected. This wasn't a narrative he'd rehearsed for. This was unpredictable, and unpredictable was dangerous. Jenna continued calmly, her voice unwavering as she brought up more names, more stories. More alleged examples of comedians who claimed their opportunities dried up just as Kevin's star rose. She did not raise her voice. She did not accuse Kevin of crimes. She simply repeated what others had said. And the more she repeated, the more the audience felt the pressure bearing down on Kevin. When she mentioned Terrell Jackson, the comedian who supposedly came close to landing a major platform before Kevin allegedly intervened, Kevin's expression shifted from anger to disbelief. He denied it fiercely, insisting that business decisions were complex, that he never intended to sabotage anyone's career. But Jenna countered with another message. Another example. Another point. By now, Kevin's frustration had transformed into something more vulnerable. He lowered himself back into the chair, exhausted, defeated, trying to find footing in a conversation that felt like sinking sand. "You're painting me as a villain," he said quietly. "I'm asking you to confront the version of yourself that others say they've seen." Jenna replied. The room grew still. Kevin swallowed hard, his voice cracking slightly. He talked about the brutal nature of the entertainment industry, the fear of losing everything, the paranoia that accompanies success. He admitted, hesitantly, that he had made choices based on self-preservation, that he had been scared, that he had been protective, not malicious. Jenna didn't interrupt. She let his words linger in the air, heavy and trembling. The audience watched, stunned, as the comedic mask Kevin always wore slipped further away, revealing a man grappling not with accusations, but with internal truths he'd buried for years. At last, Jenna asked the question that made Kevin freeze. "If you knew your actions could hurt others, why didn't you stop?" Kevin didn't answer immediately. He stared at the floor, his hands clasped tightly together. Then he whispered, "Because I was afraid." The studio didn't move. Not a sound. And for the first time in the interview, Kevin Hart looked human, vulnerable, and painfully honest. Kevin's admission changed the entire energy of the room. The tension didn't disappear, but it shifted from confrontation to something quieter, something heavier. It was as though his vulnerability cracked open a part of the story no one expected to see. The cameras zoomed in, capturing a man no longer ready to defend himself, but ready, possibly, for the first time in years, to confront the weight he'd been carrying. Jenna spoke softer now, not attacking, not accusing. She simply asked him what he would do differently if given the chance. And Kevin, still staring at the space between his shoes, whispered that he wished he had lifted more people up, that he wished he had been braver, that he wished he had trusted there was room for more than one rising star at a time. He talked about long nights, about growing up with nothing, about the terror of falling back into the life he had once fought to escape. Success, he said, had felt like standing on a fragile bridge, one wrong move, one competitor rising too fast, and everything could crack beneath him. "So you push people back?" Jenna said quietly. "I pushed people away," Kevin corrected. "I didn't see them as enemies. I saw them as threats, and I hated that part of myself. So I kept pretending it wasn't there." The audience exhaled collectively. Some looked emotional. Some looked confused. Some looked stunned that they were witnessing something so raw, so unfiltered, so painfully real. Jenna placed the folder of documents on the table between them, not as a weapon now, but as a symbol of unresolved truths. She didn't open it again. She didn't read another word. The conversation had moved beyond accusations. It had become something more human, more complex. Kevin finally lifted his head, looking directly at her. "What happens now?" Jenna didn't smile. She didn't soften. She simply told him that what happened next depended on him. Whether he owned his past, whether he made amends, whether he changed, whether he let this moment define him or transform him. Kevin nodded slowly. Then, without a dramatic exit, without another burst of anger, he stood, not to walk off, but to steady himself, to face the audience, to face the cameras, to face the version of himself he had avoided for years. And for the first time that day, the applause didn't come from excitement, but from understanding.